Okay. Good evening, everyone. Through the prayers of our Holy Fathers, through the prayers of our Holy Fathers, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. This is Father Joseph Swaden. God bless you all. And tonight we have David Conley on the line. We are going to be talking about a book. David, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Yeah, you sound great. Okay, so you brought this book to my attention yesterday. So if you can give me a little bit more background on it. I'm not sure if I should share a picture from the notes or if how should I do that. This book here. Yeah, let me just see if I can make this bigger.
So the reason I reached out to you about the book was I was listening to the stream you were doing covering Father Cardine's interview.
Okay.
And he was mentioning all of this anti-Western rhetoric he gets from other Orthodox and all this kind of thing. And I've met Father Patrick, he's a very nice guy. I just think it's funny because all of this is, to say it politely, all of this is coming from within his own house.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that.
And this book was something that is running kind of rampant right now throughout the mainstream Orthodox world. And this is being pushed by his own archdiocese.
Oh, this is being pushed by the Antiochian archdiocese?
Let's just say it's in every parish and it's in every Facebook page, and it's very popular in the Orthodox world right now.
Okay, and the book is Thinking Orthodox, Understanding and Acquiring the Orthodox Christian Mind by Eugenia Scarvelis Constantinou, PhD. And so, look here. This is the back cover, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got the back cover here. It says Phronima. What does it mean to think Orthodox? What are the unspoken and unexplored premises? So this book is about supposedly acquiring an Orthodox mindset, or Phronima. Mm-hmm. Dr. Jeannie Constantino brings her more than 40 years' experience as a professor, Bible teacher, and speaker in explaining what the Orthodox Phronima is. Okay, so I guess she's been teaching Bible studies for 40 years. Let me see here. It's got a forward from Archpriest John A. McGuckin, PhD, Lit. Okay.
I don't know much about him. I think he's noted for his work on Cyril of Alexandria.
Yeah. Let me see here. And so this Dr. Eugenia Constantino hosts the popular podcast Search the Scriptures Live on Ancient Faith Radio. Do they still have shows on Ancient Faith Radio? I thought they shut that all down or something.
I think it's still going. I'm not sure. I know they have an archive.
Yeah, they shut the blogs down. Professor, visiting lecturer. Okay, I'm just waiting for it. University of San Diego, Holy Cross Greek Orthodox School of Theology, Harvard Divinity School, Juris Doctor case. I guess she's a lawyer. Pepperdine University, PhD from University of Laval in Quebec City. She's married to Father Costas, a Greek Orthodox priest. Okay, I just was waiting for that. I knew I'd see it coming. Okay, so this is a very popular book, you're saying, apparently, in the... okay, somebody said the Presbyterian that wrote that be crazy. Okay. All right. First off, you've read the book. I've barely delved into it. How bad is it?
So, and just to give just to be to give a full disclaimer, I'm a nobody. I'm just a person that read the book and kind of was uncomfortable from the get-go because I was in a parish study group where the book was being read, and it's not a short book. I mean, it's 360 pages. I mean, it's a thick book. It's a big tome. But the big push of the book is that the Phronima is kind of this mindset you acquire. But it's not really, it's kind of this gobbledygook kind of mindset that leads you in whatever way you should go. But the essence of the mindset is Greek good, non-Greek bad.
Oh, well, I haven't heard that before. Okay, so Greek good, okay, everything else is bad. So
the notes I think I just highlights because there's so much there.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And I want to start going through some of the notes here because this is. Let me see here. Somebody says, "Hey man, everyone in our world Orthodox Christians recommended it. We were pretty much the only ones who didn't like it." Okay, so this book, either this is like marzipan. Either you love this book or you hate it. So
Apparently.
it would so appear to me that yeah, okay, so I think I kind of get it. All right, so let's take a look and let's dive in a little bit. Now, your first issue that you brought up with the book, I believe you mentioned that was Augustine. I don't. Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing. So
I tried to keep things in topic. I tried
Okay.
to keep
Oh,
topic.
okay.
It goes everywhere so much. My own thoughts were pretty messy, so I tried to approach it by topic and by the page order. So that's kind of how I presented it to you in the notes.
Okay. Give me just a moment. So let me put them back on the screen because then I guess this goes to page 50. It's a pretty big book, as you mentioned. It's over 350 pages. And I'm going to go through the first thing that we were looking at here because I was a little surprised by this, to say the least. Let me just put that back up. And so I guess it says here the fourth aspect. I'm not sure what are the other three aspects that she mentioned. Just out of curiosity.
So the first aspect was see. So this chapter was the phronema in the Western tradition. So she's saying she goes to these different aspects of centralized authority, faith and reason, and development of doctrine.
Of doctrine.
And so this is the fourth one, which was aspect of legalism.
Okay, yeah. Let me see here. Give me just a second. Okay. Somebody noted that the audio got a little bit worse on my side. Let me try to see if I can fix that because I'm going to switch mics again because I have three different mics I can go to at this point. Let me just make sure that's not too loud. Okay, so hopefully that's better. In any case, all right. So basically, it sounds like what it's describing in this first chapter is like kind of the current Western mindset. You know, the current like Roman Catholic or whatever kind of mindset.
And full disclosure, I come from a Roman Catholic background. So when she started getting into this, I was just like, this isn't what the Roman Catholic Church teaches. I wish the Roman Catholic Church had been more legalistic, but this it was really foreign what she was describing.
Yeah. Okay. So what she's saying here, it looks like, says a juridical mentality is foreign to the Orthodox phronema. I think that would be kind of news to a lot of administrative hierarchies. The Orthodox refer to their canons as the holy canons rather than the code of canon law. That's correct. And Orthodox canons are not codified, systematized, organized, or even updated. Okay. I mean, that's just wrong. I mean, they are codified and they're organized by the councils and there are canonical commentaries and okay.
The
canons also
Nicodemus the Haggardite for us.
Yeah, I guess he just wasted his time. He should have just left them the way they were. It was just a big mess. The canons also do not function as law in the manner in which Catholics apply and interpret their own law.
And that might be true.
I would probably disagree with that also.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that that's. Yeah, I mean it's an iffy. It implies that they don't really work like laws, but we have canon lawyers in Orthodox country who would strongly disagree.
Yep.
Okay, so sin as debt.
This is where it gets good. That's immediately, yeah.
Legalism in Catholic theology is reflected in the Roman Catholic view of sin and its removal. This also has its roots in the thought of St. Augustine, who concluded that all human beings not only inherit morality and the inclination to sin from Adam, but they are guilty and legally liable before God for Adam's sin. This doctrine profoundly affects the perspective of how one is saved and from what he is saved. And she gets that from Bowyer. Okay, this didn't even come from St. Augustine himself. It's just
that was my first problem was if you're going to say somebody said something in an academic context, you would think a PhD would cite the person who said it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then let me see here. So, okay. So then let's see if we can just go a little further. Okay, atonement theology effectively makes the Roman Catholic Church the means of legal justification, which pronounces not guilty through the sacraments, rather than a process which restores the innate goodness of man. I don't know if I'd go that far.
That's what's not quite true. Now you could say that about maybe a Lutheran or a Calvinist, but that's not
Yeah,
exactly the way a Catholic would say the sacraments work.
right. Yeah, this doesn't sound correct at all. From the Reformation on, Protestants and Catholics not only shared a common frontima, but a common set of questions. Both Roman and Reformed were content to argue about the same problems. Neither side questioned the agenda. Both shared the assumptions of Western theology. That's Joseph McClellan sailing to Byzantium. Uh, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. First off, because it kind of blamed everything on Augustine and on Saint Augustine, and then further, like we're talking about scholasticism, which I assume she talked about in previous chapters, but kind of laying the blame at Augustine seems really incorrect, especially if she talked about the development of doctrine, so on and so forth. There's no reason to.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure what is going on with that. Blind G Tech says she has problems with the ever virginity of Mary. Really?
I didn't know that.
Okay. That's bad.
So in my
I'm
notes,
shocked. Yeah.
I went to the Bauer book because I have it. When I saw the footnote, I thought, oh, I think I have that book. So I think I gave you
Okay.
that next page was the Bauer. Yeah, there it is.
Oh, this one
On
right
the page.
here?
Yep, on the
Okay.
page. That's the page she cited. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. So let me see here. At the core of Anselmian atonement was St. Augustine's doctrine of original sin. And this is determined from yet another secondary source. You know, for a lot of talk about Augustine, nobody seems to want to quote him.
Yeah, that was the issue. I think she
So
quoted
due
the
to a
Council of
faulty,
Trent, or he did, yeah. Which I was like, in Council of
yeah,
Trent,
he
like, what,
quoted the Council of Trent.
1,200 years after Augustine. That's quite a gap.
Yeah, that's yeah. Not only is that unfair, it's not very good scholarship. But okay, so that looks like this is more of Bauer's thing or Bauer's thing, and okay, the council proceeded to anathematize all who refused to accept the doctrine of original sin, that all had received Adam's guilt for his personal sin. Now, I'm pretty sure that the original sin, whether you call it ancestral sin or not, is just there. It's always been in the tradition of the church. Even though, I mean, are we getting rid of original sin? Is that kind of the hint here?
Well, reading this whole book kind of sent me into a research on like what is the issue here? Like, what's the problem? And
Yeah,
people become very emotional about this really quickly, and they begin just all of these emotional issues kind of well up, and I'm sitting back like, well, I want to see the text. I want to see like what the person's actually saying.
right.
And the thing that I always found interesting, or that I started to see when we talk about ancestral sin, is no two people mean the same thing by ancestral sin. It becomes this like cover word for whatever way we want to
You're
not
talking
say
about
it.
with modern writers, right?
Yes, yeah, with modern
Yeah.
writers,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Just to be clear, yeah.
yeah. So
Um,
it becomes just physical death, or it becomes just the inclination to sin, or it becomes this vague thing by which we die, but we really have no sin. So it's this weird thing that nobody will really define because it does not match up to the canons any new
wow.
way they try to cast it. Because the big
Wow.
thorn in the side here is Carthage 418 or
Yeah.
419, which was confirmed by Trullo
Right.
and
It's in the rudder. Yeah. And the
exactly.
point is, so that, but when you start saying things like, well, we don't really have any cannons anyway, well, then I guess you could do that. And you have a whole new
Exactly.
system based. It's not historical in any way, shape, or form, but at least it's, let me see here.
And the crux of the
Okay.
matter that nobody wants to mention is that Augustine was at that council.
Yeah. St. Augustine was at that council.
He was at
Now,
that
this is,
council. He mentions it in his writings, and he gives no indication that he thought that the definition it gave was insufficient.
yeah. Wow. Okay, Blangy Tech says go to a video about the Protevangelium of James at around the 1450 mark. I will do that because that's really a shock, and we'll take a look at it once we get through this. Give me just a moment here. So let's take a look here. Okay, so this vicarious sacrifice is the belief that Christ receives the wrath and punishment of God the Father in our stead. Okay, so now let me see here. And then, okay, so this was kind of, these were kind of notes you took. I don't know if you want to read that or if you want to.
That's we can totally read that if we want to. I mainly that was kind of like me just organizing my thoughts. But what I thought in there was no actual quote from Augustine.
Yeah,
and we quoted Trent, but not Augustine. But we're going to blame it on Augustine, so that's cool. That's cool, I guess. And we're going to take a swipe at sacrificial atonement at the same time, so that's cool. So I gave you 2 quotes from Augustine that actually come from his letters.
I see them right here.
Yeah, Julian was somebody he was debating with about this because I believe Julian was arguing the Pelagian point at the time. And these 2 quotes, I guess everybody gets hung up on, well, original sin means that we're guilty of Adam's action. And I can't find where that is anywhere. We're not guilty of Adam's action, but we are guilty of being born separated from God spiritually.
Right.
And I think that even says that in the Catechism of Peter Mogila, which was one of the first things I read. Actually,
well, I was looking at the notes, and we're going to go through that too, because there's some astounding claims that have been made in this text that you've discovered so far. So let's continue here, and give me just a moment. I'm going to just go a little further here. So basically, the author takes a swipe at all theological discourse in the Orthodox world between Florence and now. So we get back to this book. Okay, so lack of centrality, definitions, and documents. Orthodox theologians do not have a body of official statements similar to Vatican documents or Protestant confessional statements that define the Orthodox faith. We have no official or even unofficial catechism. Well, that's wrong because, the Catechism of Peter Mogila is, in fact, an official catechism, and the longer Catechism of St. Philaret is also recognized as catechism. These were approved catechisms in the church. No theological source or filter exists for interpreting the fathers or the scriptures other than one's phronema. What? Hold on. Let me see if I understand this correctly. There's no way to interpret the fathers except for one's own mindset. What about other fathers? I mean, that's the whole point of the consensus of the fathers. Is this even brought up? There is no papacy or magisterium to make authoritative pronouncements. That's not wrong. No ecclesiastical structures or external restraints direct the Orthodox theologian towards acceptable Orthodox theological conclusions. I feel like that's the job of bishops to do when an academic has gone off the deep end. Nothing like an imprimatur exists to approve one's writings or officially recognize a book that presents acceptable Orthodox teaching. I'm pretty sure the blessing of a bishop does exist in Orthodoxy, and in many books you see it. The Orthodox churches use no documents or canons which demand that one submit in will and intellect to church teachings or to bishops. Okay, now I kind of want to see this video, because now I'm starting to feel like I think I'm getting what kind of person we're dealing with here. And Blind She adds, she also supports universalism. I'm going to go to this. I'm going to find this video about the Protevangelion, because this whole you're free to do whatever you want. That's definitely not an Orthodox phronema. Give me just a
so you can imagine a former traditional Roman Catholic becoming Orthodox, sitting in a study group reading this book, and I'm pretty sure I started to twitch.
Yeah.
Smoke might even start coming out of my ears. I wasn't sure what was happening at the moment. But I was stunned that this is a thing that they're handing out to people. That's interesting.
That's not interesting. That's bad. Hold on. Let me just quickly get back there. What is... Okay, Eugenia Constantino, and let me get back to this thing, and then let's go to. Hold on, I have to find it in the YouTube, I guess. Okay. All right. Let me see here. Protevangelium explained. I'm not seeing. Is there any chance? While we go through this, Blind G, if you could find the name of the video, because I am not finding this here. It's There's a few. She's got a lot of videos up, so I guess she's kind of popular. But I don't see. Oh, here we go. Is this it? Or is this the Tibelian? I don't know if this is it. No, I don't think so. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get like a name of the video to find it. But let's continue with the text review. He also supports universalism. That doesn't surprise me at this point. All right, so let's continue with the
pretty popular belief everywhere now. So
yeah, I've noticed that, but it makes sense. You know, ecumenism goes hand in hand with universalism. Once you've started with ecumenism, you end up in universalism anyway.
Exactly.
Okay, let's see what we got here.
The avoiding
definitions. The struggle in the West to understand orthodoxy and the compulsion to create Western categories to explain orthodoxy is seen in the recurring tendency among some Western Christians to point to the so-called symbolic books of the Eastern Church, in particular Metropolitan of Kiev Peter Mogila's Orthodox Confession, as well as the statements of Patriarch Dositheos and the decrees of the Council of Jerusalem in 1672. These statements appeal to Western Christians because they employ Western categories and are highly influenced by Western Christian thought. Wait a second. So in the previous page, she says, we have no unofficial or even official or unofficial catechism, no theological. So then she basically points to, well, Peter Mogila's, catechism. And then she's trying to say that this was like, appealing to Western Christians. No, it's just part of the teaching of the church.
So when we were reading this as a group, I stopped, and just like said, well, has anybody here read Peter Mogila's catechism? And everybody, like just crickets. And I said, well, it's the 10 Commandments, the Beatitudes, and the Creed. Is that so bad? Like,
yeah,
I mean, is that so bad? And then the Confession of Dositheus, I mean, that's a reply to a heretical patriarch that published a Calvinist confession.
Yeah, I know.
So you don't just not the church just doesn't just not respond when a problem comes up because, well, it might be using other categories. You have to address something when it's addressed to you. And if you have to use those categories to correct it, then you have to use those categories. That's what Chalcedon is.
David, can I just want to ask a quick question of the group, because sometimes you're breaking in and out. Is everyone else here breaking in and out, or is that just me? And I should probably reset myself. Just real quick, because I'm hearing a lot of static, but I'm not sure if it's just me.
I heard you just fine.
Okay. Let me see. It might just be me then. I might just need to close some stuff. But let me take a look here. Okay, well, no one's saying anything on that, so I guess that's okay. It's going fine. All right, so let's... Orthodox Christianity can never communicate itself to the West by using Western concepts, categories, and presumptions. And yet the West cannot understand Orthodoxy without placing Orthodox belief within those parameters. Wow, this is where we got. This is like where we start getting into that mumble sort of thing. The Western Christian may believe he understands the contract of Orthodox doctrine, but without our phronema, one can truly not understand Orthodoxy. As shown in the previous chapter, even basic concepts such as sin and salvation are understood differently in Orthodoxy than the West. There was a text called Way Apart by Metropolitan Anthony Krapovitsky, where he does argue that a Westerner does not have the understanding of Orthodoxy, and there is a very big difference in mindset. But he then proceeds to explain how that is. It's not some nebulous concept where, there's some like super mysterious phronema power you get when you're baptized. That's not what happens. I feel like this is kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost romanticizing the reality of Orthodox living. Okay, so yeah, Zane V says he sounds fine from here. So okay, that's my computer then. Let me kill a couple of these.
So to refer back to Father Patrick Cardine's issue that he was saying that Orthodox are so opposed to his Western ethos. This book is pushing this book is pushing that a Westerner really can't be Orthodox in their mind because they're just not whatever. I mean, they're just not. So, then I would then ask, is that the next logical step? Was the West ever Orthodox?
Right. Because how would you know? Especially if they're grabbing back to their tradition from St. Augustine, and this is what they come up with. It must be that they must have always been heterodox, which starts to sound a lot to me like a lot of modern currents in Orthodoxy, many of which are familiar to the viewers on this channel, including people like Father John Romanides, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So let's continue on.
I'm getting there.
All right, one moment. Let me see if there's anything else interesting in this page. The creed is actually not a definition, really. In Greek, it is called the symbol of the faith, but it's not a definition. It points to what God is, but does not define God. All right, that's just 1984 level doublespeak. If you point to what something is, you're defining it. Interesting, great men like St. Philaret of Moscow and St. Justin Popovich felt differently. Moving on, let us talk about how Augustine might be the church father today, but not tomorrow, and contradict what we said about the 7 ecumenical councils being a standard, the same we don't believe in original sin, which is in councils 6 and 7. Okay. This. All right. Yeah, this is kind of odd. Yeah, at times I see that we move from very, very careful sleight of hand to suddenly explaining, like reading something that sounds like it's like explained like I'm 5.
Yeah.
And so, this is one of those cases where we're looking at this and it's like most church fathers are men who search the church as bishops. Okay, that's great. And some priests, and there's even some lay people. And because the Orthodox Church is consistent, timeless, and changeless in its phronema, we recognize what is Orthodox and what is not, what is part of the tradition and what is not, and we honor those who preserve tradition and expressed it accurately. I'm curious as to how then she couldn't realize that something that was designed as a catechism by Peter Mogila was not a catechism, because that should have been obvious with the phronema powers. And so, let me see here. Orthodoxy or doctrine, brilliance of mind, holiness of life, and ecclesiastical approval. Okay, yeah, that sounds pretty good. And brilliance of mind and antiquity. Okay, so that's why they have Clement, Tertullian. Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's fair. That RC kind of definitions of church fathers are broader because it just has to kind of be ancient and wise.
Yeah, I was just laying the groundwork of what she defines as a church father. So.
I'm noticing that, and here we go. The special case of St. Augustine. At this point, a word must be said about St. Augustine, who is by far the most important father in the Catholic Church, but is almost generally entirely ignored in Orthodox Christianity. Okay, that's wrong in both cases. St. Augustine's important, but so is St. Gregory the Great, or St. Leo the Great. That's weird. And entirely ignored in Orthodox Christianity. Wow. Augustine is at the root of the deviation of the West from the ancient tradition. This would imply that the West deviated from ancient tradition in the 4th and 5th century. Mm-hmm. This was well established by 20th century Orthodox theologian John Romanides. Oh, boy. Augustine made significant theological errors and deviated from the consistent tradition of the church. He also introduced an entirely new phronema to the West, precisely the emphasis on faith and reason. So the West lost its faith in the 5th century. St. Augustine used his, phronema powers to overthrow the phronema of the entire church in the West. And let me see here. Wow. Okay. And then, yeah, that's true. Deflective subterfuge. This is terrible. Lady V writes personal opinion of unspoken goal in this book is to encourage converts to not question the new teachings that are pushed as traditional orthodoxy. Yeah, I'm getting that. Well, this is a whole new history. Now you got the entire, the West is now heterodox in the 5th century. You got to throw out St. Gregory Dialogos. You have to throw out St. Leo. You have to throw out all the other holy Western saints and fathers. And what about the ecumenical councils which mention them? This is what's the renovationism? It's just straight up renovationism. The Greek fathers maintained an unwavering continuity with apostolic tradition in language, thought, and phronema, never yoking faith and reason. Augustine was a prolific writer, and the Latin West came to rely almost exclusively on him for its theology and phronema. Wow, that's a bold and historically false claim. That's crazy. That Augustine dominated and shaped the Western Christian mind. Western Christian theology is the phronema of Augustine. Oh boy. Oh wow. The East did not acquire the mind of one father, but the mind of the fathers. Oh, this is just bad history. Augustine's writings were not translated into the Greek until the Middle Ages, when theological issues had already divided East and West. Prior to those translations, the Orthodox had no knowledge of Augustine's phronema or his theological errors. He had been accepted as a saint and father in the East based on his reputation in the West long before the Great Schism. But he was never cited in the East since knowledge of Latin was uncommon there. This is another one of those big deceptions that they talk about, because the Greek fathers, many of them had access to St. Augustine's writings in Greek. This is something that's even brought up at Florence, which is why at certain points they could identify certain things that Augustine didn't say. If he's used at all, he would be cited only with extreme caution and probably more for historical purposes or scripture interpretation. In other words, Augustine has the title father, but is not treated as one by the Orthodox. Wow. Some Orthodox Christians argue that St. Augustine is not even a saint, because in Orthodox circles, he's routinely referred to as the Blessed Augustine. That's a Roman Catholic distinction, the whole blessed versus saint. If you're called blessed, you're a saint in Orthodoxy. For someone who has the phronema powers, apparently she doesn't know the difference between, the fact that we don't have the distinction of blessed versus saint like Roman Catholics do. But St. Augustine is on the church's canon of saints, and there's no such thing in the church as someone who is sort of a saint. Titles such as blessed or venerable, osios, are simply descriptive or honorific. They do not indicate that someone is not exactly a saint or somehow occupies it. Why don't you just say he's a saint then? Just say he's a saint. Okay. Other Orthodox Christians argue that Augustine should not be considered a father because of his errors, but such a stance is contrary to Orthodox phronema. This phronema stuff is starting to fit. It's like a buzzword where it's like you can't figure out that the word means mindset, and all of a sudden it's like, you don't have the Orthodox mindset.
It kind of becomes the Gnostic gnosis.
Yeah, the secret phronema,
the secret knowledge. Yeah, knowledge.
Augustine is a father because he has been regarded as one for hundreds of years, and it is unorthodox to individually oppose the position of the church. Well, at least she does note that he was acknowledged for hundreds of years. It's kind of amazing that she's basically going, but this is basically, here's all the reasons you shouldn't acknowledge him.
But then she flips in the next paragraph.
Oh, she flips in the next one? Okay. Since Augustine's writings have become more accessible in translation on the internet, they're facing greater scrutiny and widespread disapproval among Orthodox faithful and theologians. In many instances, Augustine does faithfully express the ancient tradition of the church common to East and West. But the title, quote, Father of the Church, unquote, requires that one faithfully preserve apostolic teaching unchanged, and the Orthodox overwhelmingly concur that Augustine deviated from tradition and committed serious theological errors. Okay, St. Augustine's named in one of the ecumenical councils.
Two of them.
Since no formal process exists for declaring someone to be either a father or not a father, it's very possible that in the future, Orthodox Christianity will not recognize Augustine as a father. However, this cannot be based on the opinion of individuals. This is insane. This is literally like anarchist thinking. Wow.
But I said father today, maybe not tomorrow.
He's saint today, not tomorrow. It's like, oh boy. Probably in reverse for Origen, too. They probably want to bring him on the calendar. Pano Custoris wrote, I called him St. Augustine, LOL. Yeah, I can't believe what I'm reading. Also, Father John Romanides is not a saint or blessed. No, and let's not talk about the noose juice. And it's pretty much on the Trinity and some weird ideas in City of God, right? The rest of his writings are not problematic. Even those writings, a lot of them have been interpolated. There's very little that's actually objectionable in St. Augustine. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of people who talk about that at length.
Both of her quotations she takes from book 15, which we all know which is believed to have been highly interpolated. So,
yeah. All right. So let's continue. Augustine changed the understanding of the fall and original sin from that of the early church, forever influencing the West's conception of sin, forgiveness, and spiritual perfection. See Romanitas again. Augustine was also responsible for introducing the idea that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Son. Oh boy, as well as the progress or development of dogma. She's just like Augustine invented Roman Catholicism. He
I've
did
never heard
the development of dogma. He basically he wrote it before John Henry Newman did. He invented the Filioque. I'm like, this is amazing. This is like so historically wrong. I've never seen anything like this before, this bad. But it's constant referencing to Romanitas. She also refers to one of his Greek works, which I guess hasn't been translated. Wow. Yeah, so if you want to read the notes, you can. Okay, so taking a look here, this is crazy. Freemason Augustine creating cults. He must have started the Freemasons too. I mean, he did start the development of doctrine. He had started the Filioque. I mean, this guy has frontal power that's so strong, it's just like breaking space and time. I'm just in awe at how terrible this is as I continue reading it. But here are some notes here. It's pointing out that the Fifth Ecumenical Council mentions St. Augustine. From the sentence of the council, it mentions St. Augustine. The letter of Pope Vigilius mentions St. Augustine. And so that's just, wow. Okay, so here's some quotes from St. Augustine here. If you could read those for me, please, there, David.
So let's see which one. Oh, the question was that Augustine invented original sin. He invented this, and it was unknown before him. So his teacher, I'm Athanasius, first of all. So when Adam had transgressed, his sin reached into all men. So Athanasius was well 100 years before Augustine. So I guess Augustine went retroactively and decided to
he used his time traveling frontal power to convert Saint Athanasius.
Right.
But
right.
Go to the end. What's the next one?
Let me pull up my notes a little bit bigger here. I can't quite see them.
Okay.
So the next one was from Cyprian of Carthage, which has become real popular recently with the whole debate with baptism. Cyprian of Carthage died 100 years before Augustine. So he was already well in the grave. But it says, but again, if even to the greatest sinners, those who had sinned much against God, when it had subsequently been believed remission of sins is granted, nobody is hindered from baptism and from grace. How much rather ought we shrink from hindering an infant who, by being born, has not sinned, except in that being born after the flesh according to Adam, he has contracted the contagion of the ancient death in its earliest birth, who approaches more easily this way on the account of the reception of the forgiveness of sins. To him are remitted not his own sins, but the sins of another. And so when I had this discussion with somebody who was just adamant that Orthodox do not believe in original sin, I said, well, then why are infants baptized? And they said, well, they have to share in the life of Christ. So they're sharing in the life of Christ through baptism. And I said, so are there two different baptisms? And they basically started to say yes. And I said, but the creed says I believe in one baptism for the remission of sins. And then it's like, so they paint themselves in a corner because there's no way out of this.
Yeah, I'm pretty much I'm kind of just in awe at what I'm reading. This is and this book is popular?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I will even say I have seen it in a Rocor bookstore. I'll go that much to say.
Wow. That's I don't even have words. Okay, and so this points out some inconsistencies. Well, here's a quote from Saint Ambrose about Adam, and then there's the Council of Carthage, which is also quoted in Pomazansky's Orthodox Dogmatic Theology. Wow, this is really bad. Okay, the danger of expansion, innovation, and speculation. One who ignores tradition or the Orthodox phronema effectively betrays the Orthodox faith. A favorite biblical quotation among fathers was, "Do not move the ancient boundaries which your fathers have established." Okay, so now we're getting. Okay, so first we've rewritten history, but now we're getting scary about it. Frequently cited to encourage maintaining tradition and not going beyond it. When St. Augustine was attempting to explain the relationship of the Holy Spirit to the Father and the Son, he said that the Spirit is neither from the Father alone nor from the Son alone, but both that the Father and the Son share a reciprocal love which is identified with the Holy Spirit. She gives the quote on the Trinity. And then we've actually we've gone through these previously on other shows. And this isn't correct. And of course he lacked precision. That's one of the usual accusations. He lacked a precise understanding of the meaning of the Greek terms, not only the Greek terms used in the New Testament, but the explanations of them given by the Greek fathers who preceded him. Augustine relied on the application of his mind rather than on the scriptures and tradition because he believed that faith could not conflict with reason. That's not Augustine. That's Thomas Aquinas.
Yeah.
Wow. This is, time-traveling Augustine phronema strikes again. He's now just moved into the 12th century. This led to his innovation and expansion on the tradition beyond the established boundaries. It was typical of Augustine to analyze every issue exhaustively and eventually arrive at a logical conclusion, and that style is seen in this treatise on the Trinity. His approach planted the roots of the Western Christian theological method. This is really unfair. This is like slandering a saint. Yeah, I agree. This is really shameful. And the fact that
he
this
might not
is
be
being
a saint tomorrow, so maybe you can do it.
Yeah, that's true. They might take him out. You never know. But wow. This is bad. Let me see here. Okay, and let me see. Let's set aside the many proofs of Augustine being interpolated with later commentaries, interpreted assumptions, or outright forgeries. Okay. Let's see, she doesn't. Let me see here. Now, I'm curious as to whether she got this from a primary or secondary source, because it sounds like you were checking different editions to find it.
Yeah,
but
so she notates the source to be the Nicene and Post-Nicene Fathers -1 Volume 3, which is the Hayden Schaff edition. So that edition's online. I mean, it's in the public domain now. So I went and it says at the end of the citation -215. So I thought, oh, page 215. Well, I go to 215 and this section isn't there. And so I'm looking and looking, and finally I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to have to word search this. I'm going to have to like circle F search it. So I circle F search the entire quotation, and it does come up way down in book 15. Way down in book 15. Let's see, chapter 17, paragraph 27, which she put at the beginning of the citation. So it doesn't match the page. I don't know if her like printed edition maybe has different page numbers. I've looked at multiple editions. They all have the same page numbers. So for a PhD, you should know better how to do citations. You learn that in undergrad. You should know how to do that. You have one person proofread your text, and you have another person proofread your citations. Because if this happens in front of a graduate committee meeting, they're going to rip you a new one real fast.
Yeah, well, I mean, she is a lawyer, so maybe she just had like the what's it called? Paralegal do the citations.
Awful.
But
I attached the page. I attached the page after this, after the notes, the page from the shaft.
Okay.
With the quotation. And if you go through the whole section, it's not exactly clear that he's talking about procession.
No, it's not. Well, he's at least not temporal, not eternal procession, but temporal.
Not eternal procession. In fact, he doesn't even use the word procession in these entire 2 paragraphs. And you can say that the Holy Spirit is of the Father and of the Son if you're talking about a lot of other things. If you're talking about manifestation, if you're talking about essence, if you're talking about consubstantiality, you can say that about a lot of other things. You just can't say it about procession.
Wow. Well, this is terrible.
And there are other parts of book 15 that are a lot more troubling than the one she cited. So I'm just curious why she used this one and not one that was more
I would guess based on the other writings that are being cited, which are secondary sources, is that probably came from a secondary source, but you wanted to list the primary. And so let me see here. So much that the Spirit proceeds has its origin not only from the Father and from the Son as well. That's just incorrect. Since Augustine disliked Greek, I didn't know he disliked Greek. Where did she get that from? I'm in awe. He did not read the fathers that came before him, especially the Cappadocian fathers, Saints Basil, Gregory the Theologian, and Gregory of Nyssa, who had already articulated the Trinitarian doctrine of the Church. It had already been enshrined in the Creed. Rather than countering the Arians by simply affirming the equality of the Father and the Son, St. Augustine attempted to bolster his position that the Son is equal to the Father by attributing to the Son something new, that the Spirit proceeds from the Father, but not from the Father alone. Okay, now she says this is Augustine on the Trinity 2645.
And this is one of the more troubling passages, but I think I don't remember if I quoted it in there or not.
Okay, so this is one of the interpolations, in other words.
Well, I think it could go either way. It wouldn't surprise me if it's an interpolation, but the scripture passage used in this little section where Augustine starts talking about proceeding from the Father and Son, he uses the scripture citation from John, I will send the Spirit to you from the Father. Some people, Craig Trullia being one of them, I hate to invoke other people's names and drag them into this, but he says that Augustine is just in a not very great way articulating temporal procession.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he is describing it in time, so in that particular scripture verse, so that does make sense. Because if he's saying, I will send to you, he's literally talking to the apostles as they are. He's not talking about the generation of the Holy Spirit at all. And let me see here. This is really, really bad. She makes Augustine out to be basically like the creator of filioquism, and this isn't real. Somebody said, Blanche Tech says she sounds like the female version of Romanitas. Yeah, she does, or she, definitely one of like his, like, I guess, like, I don't know, I don't want to say spiritual disciples because that implies that what he's teaching is spiritual. Let me see here. The Holy Trinity is a great mystery and a very difficult subject to discuss. While the Filioque may seem trivial, no, it doesn't, since the addition consists of only 3 little words in English and 1 word in Latin. Oh boy. But, eventually the Western Church added the word Filioque to the Creed, solidifying the error by unilaterally adding something to the Nicene Creed. Most millennium popes were aware of the error and refused to add the Filioque to the Creed, but eventually it was accepted by all the West. The Filioque became a major issue when St. Photius was Patriarch of Constantinople, and the disagreement resulted in a brief schism. And then she says here, see Francis Dvornik, the Photian schism, and Siensky, the Filioque history of a doctrinal controversy. In the Photian schism, Photius opposed the Filioque and was condemned by a council initiated by Pope Nicholas in 869. This decision was reversed in 879 by another council called by his successor, Pope John VIII, who rejected the Filioque. Photius was reinstated, but today that's wrong on a few different things because popes don't call ecumenical councils. Emperors do.
So my eyes were immediately drawn to that. When I saw it called the.
This is the Roman Catholic reading of this is the Roman Catholic reading of how that happened, which is amazing in and of itself. Because why didn't the all powerful Phronima catch this? But in any case, that's really kind of sad. So then we see, and yes, so. You pointed here where Augustine, in his own words, would contradict that, such as in Book 4, Chapter 20, Paragraph 19. And so, this is temporal sending on faith in the Creed.
Nobody quotes on faith in the Creed. Everyone misses this one. And he actually makes St. Photius's argument 400 years before St. Photius does.
It doesn't surprise me, but that they would say something like this. But this is a very good passage where basically, Christ is the only begotten, the Holy Spirit is the one who proceeds. And then there's the Labellus here. where again, he's not the Spirit is also the Paraclete, who is himself not the Father nor the Son, but from the Father proceeds. It's very hard to say that St. Augustine invented the Filioque, and most of it is based upon, a lot of historical conjecture, a lot of, I hate to say it, fantasy, but ultimately just making stuff up. It's this is pathetic.
Almost all English editions of Augustine come from early printed Latin versions. And the printed Latin versions were taken from, of course, the manuscript versions, which were very messy and didn't match up, which Zerniakov points out. That they're all have different things. Somehow some of the scribes' notes got mixed in with the actual text. That's why you see some of this weird stuff where the language doesn't match up, where some of the language is anachronistic. That's very common in some of these different early Latin.
Now, Pano Consoros asks, is it fair to say St. Augustine believed in correct triadology but poorly articulated it? I would say he believed in correct triadology, and oftentimes the manuscript tradition muddled up a lot of what he said. Mm-hmm. In some cases, Augustine's language can be clunky because of the Latin at the time, but I don't think he actually really taught I don't think he taught at all, and I don't think it's demonstrable to say that he taught the eternal procession of the Spirit from the Son and the Father. So that's right there, I would say. Ultimately, he did teach it correctly, but what this claim is here is terrible. This is effectively implying that, I mean, she's just thrown all sorts of things on Augustine. The faith and reason thing from Aquinas, the Filioque. I'm surprised she hasn't, said that the Pope is the infallible head of the church because Augustine said so. I mean, that seems to, let me see here. Now, the Dvornik book, we talked about this earlier because in the Dvornik book, he clearly says we called the Council of 879, and that was called by Emperor Basil. Yeah. It was attended by the legates of John VIII. John VIII was not present, and all the Eastern patriarchs. There is no place where Pope John VIII calls the council. That's just not what happened. And so let me see here. And I haven't checked on Yancey's text yet, but my guess is that is most likely a false understanding. Certainly in Dvornik, which is available online freely, so you can actually look that up. I did do that, and it does not say that. It doesn't say that the Pope called the council. So I'm amazed that not only is she accusing St. Augustine of being like this inventor of heretical Western phronema, but then she's using a heretical Western phronema in terms of the definition of a council, because that is not, councils of the church, especially ecumenical councils, were not called by the Pope. They were called by the Emperor. Yeah. So I'm amazed by this. This is bad.
Well, to go back to the beginning, that Father Cardine wanted to know where this comes from. This, like I said, this is coming from within his own house. Yeah. Because I was introduced to this book by another priest of the Antiochian Western Rite. Funny enough.
Really?
Yeah. So,
and I just read it uncritically because, unfortunately, a lot of them are kind of unconverted Roman Catholics and Protestants. So they're like, "Oh, that makes sense." Oh, wow.
So it is saddening, just because, I mean, this is, when was this published? 2019.
Wow. Well,
2020.
That's really. 2020. Oh, this is recent. It's a new years ago. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, again, I've been putting up all the comments live, but if other people have questions, comments, or they want to throw in their 2 cents on this particular one, on this particular episode, it's great. I was not aware of this book. Frankly, it's a little bit poisonous, if we're going to be honest. And this is what's being offered in catechesis and world orthodoxy. I mean, this is a really bad reading of Augustine. It's a bad reading of history. And it uses fuzzy words like phronema, which isn't really a fuzzy word. It just means mindset. But as long as you keep it foreign sounding and weird, you can just add your own meanings, fill in the blanks, which is pretty depressing. I have not seen her website. Blind G Tech says her website's even crazier. It does not surprise me that this is. It's hard for me, I hate to say this, but when I read this stuff, it's women like her is why St. Paul says for women not to teach and usurp authority over men. I mean, her husband's a priest. And I mean, I hate to say this, but probably his views are exactly the same. Pano says Greeks hiding behind voodoo words. Well, it's not even. I don't know. I mean, frankly, I know there's lots of Greeks I know who are totally sane and know that the word phronema means mindset. But then I've heard converts say that you need an Orthodox phronema, and I'm like, what are you doing, pretending that you're like this? You're not from like Athens or anything. You're just some guy from Michigan or from Florida, and you're just like, oh, you must use a phronema. No, just stop, guys. It just means mindset, okay? And it's so simple, but these weasel words are so that people can put whatever they want. They can throw away the catechisms. They can throw away all the councils. They can say, oh, we don't know. They can throw away the saints. Apparently, there's no proper method to destroy a saint now, but don't worry, we'll figure one out. It's just, this is really sad.
And
I feel
my question with the thing about the so-called Western catechisms like Peter Mohila and the Council of Jerusalem. So it brings up the question in somebody like my mind. So are we saying, or is she saying, or is the mainstream saying that the Orthodox Church was the church until a certain point, and then it wasn't anymore, and then it became it again after this period? Is this kind of like a modified great apostasy kind of a theory? I
have no idea. I mean, when you start saying things like, yeah, it stops making sense. Ultimately, this would imply, because of what this implies is if St. Augustine changed the phronema of the West, which is what she says at the beginning, then that means the Council of 879 would be largely irrelevant. So would the other councils, because all of these councils, these Westerners would have had a radically different mindset than the Orthodox one. And I don't think they realize how poisonous an idea this is, because what that's effectively doing is it's kind of destroying the concept of the unity of teaching of the church that has existed for 2,000 years. And I mean, that's typical renovationism, but it's done in a very, very underhanded way. And I just feel bad. This is problematic, to say the least.
Well, reading some of this made me kind of look more into Romanides, because I was unfamiliar with him until reading this book, and just really kind of disturbed by just how nasty and kind of race hateful it was. But I mean, if you want to talk about somebody who has some really weird stuff in his writings, it's John Romanides. Not only just the stuff that people mention, like the spinal fluid stuff and that kind of thing, but in his
aliens
in one of his dogmatic books, which I don't believe has been translated into English. I think Vladimir Moss has translated large portions of it, which is where I found this quotation. But he says in there that the fathers never taught that a baby is anything different from Adam and Eve. So the baby is born completely neutral, completely blank slate, and then goes through its own fall as it matures, and that's all because of its environment. Now, who does that sound like? That sounds like
Pelagian.
That sounds like Freud.
Well, Freud and Pelagian, but anyway. Let me see. Lady Riaz, did you have any thoughts about the part of the book where she was talking about theologians versus armchair theologians? I have not read the book. David, have you gotten up to this part?
There is a part in there about like theologians versus armchair theologians. They're kind of vaguely defined. So anybody who disagrees with her would be an armchair theologian.
So anybody I don't like is an armchair theologian. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow. So that's well, I mean, sorrowfully, I thank you for bringing this to our attention, and I'm more than happy to shine a spotlight on it. It's pretty depressing. She basically says no Dunning-Kruger. Yeah. That's crazy. This is just awful. But so again, if you are reading this book and you are getting a queasy feeling about it because something seems wrong, trust your gut, as always. And again, I recommend looking up the Orthodox Confession of Justus Theos. Read the Catechism of Peter Magilla. That is ultimately the universally approved catechism of the Orthodox Church. And what I mean by that is it has been historically approved by all of the patriarchs throughout history after it was released. The longer catechism of Metropolitan Philaret is also very good. There's nothing wrong with this. And so in any case, I would say that keep on keep reading and keep learning, because this is hold on one moment. Okay. Give me just a second. I just need to clear my throat for a moment. And then I'm back. Okay. And then Pano Casura says St. Cyril's Catechism is revealing. It is. But according to our author here, catechisms don't exist. So St. Cyril said you should devote yourself wholly to the study of theology. And if only this author had taken that advice. Unfortunately, yeah, unlike this lady, yeah. Unfortunately, that's true. This is just bad. It's I don't even have words. The more I run through the ramifications of it, I mean, effectively, it's just an unraveling of the history of the Orthodox Church using St. Augustine ultimately as a prop. Or not even St. Augustine, but really post-schism Western ideas about St. Augustine as a prop. So let me see. Blind G says, I forgot to mention, this is Reader John.
Oh.
Yes, and I thank you, Reader. I do remember that sometimes I'm just kind of spacey today. So in any case, that definitely was worth discussing. I obviously am not going to recommend this book just based on what I've read. It's got basic facts about the history of the church wrong, a very poor understanding of the canons, almost a deliberately poor understanding of the canons. And from what I can see, it'll leave the reader more confused than when they read it. So in any case, David, do you have any other thoughts? Did you want to talk? Do you have a website or anything like that you might want to share, or a YouTube channel?
No, I'm just a little nobody that looked up the citations and was really confused as to why nothing in the book matched up to fact. So that's kind of why I reached out to you. I was like, this.
Oh well, that's cool. That's fine. Well, you are on our forum, so you know.
Yeah.
If you ever want to ask David questions, he is available on the forum on Discord. Yeah, he's on our Discord, and this was a very interesting subject, even though it was a little bit more depressing than usual. So in any case, I don't see any other questions, or other comments. So I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Have a great night, and may God richly bless you all.
Thanks.
And good evening.
Good night.